House Taxation meeting will come to order. First off, we'd like to request bill introductions. Are there any requests for bill introductions? Seeing none. Actually, I'll come back to that because I had one I forgot about. Just got to make sure I get the right RS number here. This is RS 3028. And this is a comprehensive food sales tax reduction. It cuts the food sales tax rate to 3.5. It makes the income tax credit refundable. And it also takes 2 points off of the statewide rate from 6.5 down to 6.3. And it continues a step down associated with the balance in the budget stabilization fund to ultimately take the entire food sales tax rate to zero. And I would entertain any questions. Representative Gardner.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The food sales tax, how long does it take to go to zero?
It would be over a period of 3 years. It steps down if the budget stabilization fund has at least $100 million balance. The following year, it takes a 1.2% off of the food sales tax rate until it goes all the way to zero.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Representative Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is this just the state food sales tax, or does this include local as well?
This is just state rate. Representative Highland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is the stabilization fund, are you reinstituting that? Because my research showed that that had gone away in 2021.
I believe the fund still exists. Maybe I could look at research. It's just at a balance of zero. Is that correct? So the fund does still exist. If the legislature has, a surplus or maybe something like that, they want to put some money away in it, they could still do that.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for your effort on that. I guess my question is, that's just going to be the SNAP eligible items that you're going to take the food sales tax off of?
The way it's defined in the bill is the same way it is in 2487. It's the streamline definition of
edibles. None of the silliness, the prepared foods or?
No prepared foods. It's just the non-prepared.
If only it went to zero to start with, I'd really be right behind you, but got to start somewhere. Thank you.
All right. Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So would this sort of be in place of the two bills we heard previously or in addition to?
Well, you can't do two of them. You'll have to pick one or the other. Any further questions? Representative Corbett?
Now, the governor has her name on her. Do you want to name this today?
No, thank you. The other piece I didn't mention, I don't mean to go into a full hearing on this right now, but it does hold harmless the state highway fund. When we adjust those rates, it does bump that up. We can see that once the bill is introduced and given a bill number and run across the floor. I think it's 17 point something, I can't remember, but it does adjust. The RS number was 22 RS 3028. Any objection to the introduction? Seeing none, the request is approved. Any further requests? Seeing none, we will move on to our agenda for the day. And the first item I'd like to address is action on House Bill 2467. And I would ask the committee's desires on 2467. Do we want to have the reviser give a quick overview first? If we remember what that is. Mr. Siebers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2467, as you may recall, would provide a Kansas income tax subtraction modification for compensation of members of the armed forces. Under the bill, an amount not to exceed $30,000 received as compensation would be allowed as such subtraction modification for an individual who is serving on active duty in the armed forces, or a Guard member who is attending an active duty training or that has completed annual training days, drill pay, initial active duty for training, regularly scheduled drill, Title 32 orders, or unit training assembly. And additionally, for married filing status taxpayers, each individual essentially could qualify for up to the $30,000 for a max of $60,000 for the subtraction modification.
Thank you, Adam. Committee questions, Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I recall, there was quite a discrepancy between the estimation by the Kansas Department of Revenue and the proponents as to what the fiscal note should be. Has there been more consensus reached on that?
Yes, Department of Revenue will address that in the fiscal note. This would be questions for the reviser.
Thank you.
I was going to take questions for the reviser, and then we'll have Kathleen come up. And then once the committee has all that information, we can go forward. So, seeing no further questions for the reviser, Kathleen, I'd welcome you to the microphone to explain some of the information that you'd received for an updated fiscal note.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Kathleen Smith with the Kansas Department of Revenue. Based on information that we received from the conferees during the hearing on House Bill 2467, which was on January 31st, we contacted the Department of Defense Finance and Accounting Service on the 2nd of February to receive information that would be pertinent to this bill. What we requested from them, number one, we asked for how many members of the military claim Kansas as their domicile for pay purposes. Number two, we asked for those Kansas members of the military, how many had taxable pay in excess of the $30,000 modification that we're going to allow through this legislation. And number three, what was the average pay of the military members with the taxable pay of less than $30,000 in calendar year 2021. A Manny Darby, he is with the Department of Defense and Accounting Congressional and Legislative Liaison, provided that they may be able to provide that information that we had requested. He is, I'm assuming it's a he, I apologize. This individual is working with the Military Pay Office to retrieve the information that we've requested, but it's going to take some weeks for them to give us that information. In the meantime, KDOR did receive information from Eugene Bradley, the Enlisted Association of the National Guard of Kansas. He's the legislative liaison. Mr. Bradley provided that some information from a self-service report through the Department of Defense personnel, workforce reports, and publications. So he gave us some information. The information that was provided by Mr. Bradley cut the number of individuals that would be eligible for this modification. For the active duty, he was able to tell us that around 8,211 individuals have Kansas as their domicile. And then the reserve and guard members was around 10,165. So that's around a total of 18,000. We were using 32,000 in our estimate originally. So we have cut the numbers down. So based upon the information that was provided by Mr. Bradley, we are now using an effective tax rate of 3.1% versus 3.4%. For simplicity's sake, we did assume that all of these individuals, these 18,000, would receive the full 30,000 modification. Now, that may not necessarily be true, especially for the reserve and guard, but again, just for simplicity's sake, that's what we used. So with an effective date of tax year 2022, The fiscal impact for fiscal year 2023 would be $7.9 million, and for 2024, it would be down to $4 million. Fiscal year 2023 includes both tax year 2022 and tax year 2023, so that's why you have the bump in that first year. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for questions.
Okay. Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you for your extra work on defining those numbers, even though it's still an art, not always a science. And I do appreciate, a lot of times when the department director of budget works on those numbers, it is always trying to calculate what the maximum fiscal impact could be, knowing that the realistic impact, as you said, with the full 18,000 receiving the full benefit may not be nearly that. So, committee, are there any questions for Kathleen? Yes, Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So why was the Guard lumped in with the full-time people? I mean, they're clearly going to be making less.
For purposes of, we did divide them out per se, but we had to make the assumption of the 30,000. We do not know what the average pay for the reserve is at this point until we can get that from the Department of Defense.
Well, I think I recall the proponents said it was somewhere around $7,000 or $8,000 a year. Thank you.
Further questions? Yes, Representative Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Smith, what the person who makes $30,000 and is exempt then from income tax, what would that be in savings for that individual?
In looking at the estimates that we have in front of us, and with the information that has been provided to date, we would probably calculate an average savings for the Guard individuals of around $70, and then for the active duty individuals around $393.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing no further questions, thank you, Kathleen. They're after me. This time, I'd entertain a motion on your desires for House Bill 2467. Representative Highland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that we pass out House Bill 2467 favorably.
Thank you, and a second from Representative Epley. Is there any discussion? Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do, if I heard Kathleen correctly, 2023, I believe it was 7.4 million. Is that right, Kathleen? And then 4 million after that, if I remember correctly, in 2024, because it takes effect, the way the bill is written today, it takes effect after December 31st, 2021, correct?
Correct, and I believe for fiscal year 2023 it was 7.9 million.
Okay, I do, thank you, Kathleen. Mr. Chairman, I do have an amendment. It's short and sweet. Maybe not that sweet, but on the page, on the back page, if you'll turn it over, all I'm doing is changing basically the effective date. Instead of December 31st, 2021, we're going to insert, this amendment inserts 2022. And I'd stand for questions.
Okay, I'll ask for a second on the Gardner amendment. Representative Holgerson. And committee, any discussion?
Why?
A couple reasons. Number one, we really don't have a good fiscal note on this. And so I don't want to rush in to make this effective 2021 or for tax year 2022. Let's give it a little bit of time. If this moves forward, let's make it effective the following year.
Representative Baker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is this bill amendable for other people besides military? EMS, my wildlife and parks guy here. Some of those, that's amendable onto this bill also?
What's your wildlife and parks?
We have some of those folks here that might want to get in on, be amended onto the bill also.
Sure. I mean, if anybody, if you want to segregate and point out a different occupation, I guess that would be.
All right, thank you.
Representative Bergkamp?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess at the end of the day, I just really don't support the bill. I fail to see how it's going to incentivize people to change their residency to Kansas when you have states that have a zero income tax rate that a lot of people cycle through. And I think it was stated that very few maybe are already active in Kansas and are residents of Kansas who pay taxes here. And then once you retire, there's no income tax. So to me, it's just a policy that sounds good, but isn't going to have much of an effect, minus the state of Kansas paying out some more money at the end of the day. So thank you.
Remind everyone, we are debating the amendment right now, or discussion on the amendment.
Okay.
Just get us back on track. Seeing no further discussion, Representative Gartner, would you like to close?
I will, Mr. Chairman. I close.
Committee, you've heard the motion from Representative Gartner to amend. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The amendment is adopted. Now we are back on the bill for discussion. Representative Schmidt.
Mr. Chairman, I certainly support the concept behind this bill, but I think we have heard from a lot of groups that want a tax cut, and we know that we can't give them all. And we just heard from the Department of Revenue that the person who makes a full $30,000 would have a reduction in income tax of $393. If we gave a full food sales tax cut, we're told that would be $500. I assume that's maybe a little high, but even if it is, even if it's $400, I think maybe we'd be better to give sales tax exemption for food than to do this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Committee, any further discussion? Yes, Representative Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just thinking back to when we had the hearing on it, I guess I'll just echo that my thoughts were that I didn't really hear a business case presented in terms of the payback for the money that we're going to be giving up. And I certainly understand the representative that brought this and that constituent group wanting the first $30,000 exempted. Any constituent group would. In fact, the whole state, I think, would. And, you know, as I look at his testimony, it talks, or maybe this is in the fiscal note, yeah. You know, active duty on average salary, $50,000 to $70,000. There's a lot of folks in our community that would love to have that same $30,000 lopped off. So I won't be supporting it, but I do support, you know, the underlying premise and helping out the folks. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, Representative Highland, would you like to close?
I would move my motion on House Bill 2467 as amended.
Thank you. Committee, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes, and the bill is passed out of committee. Next item we have is for your consideration is Senate Bill 318. And once again, I'll look first to the reviser for an overview on Senate Bill 318.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 318 created essentially 2 sales tax exemptions and then also expanded the existing abatement of property tax. The first 2 sales tax exemption are essentially both related to sales of agriculture, or exemption for agricultural fencing. And the first one would be for destroyed by natural disaster commencing on after January 1 of 2021, which was what ties to the event on that date. So any sales tax paid for to repair any fencing that was destroyed, and then commencing July 1 of this year, July 1 of 2022, all sales tax would be exempt for the purchase of property and services for constructing agricultural and fencing. And then Section 2 of the bill would expand the eligibility for property tax abatements to allow for buildings and improvements to also qualify if destroyed or substantially destroyed by a natural disaster. This would be in addition to her homesteads, which is currently allowed under the law.
Thank you for that, Adam. Committee, are there any questions for the reviser? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion on action for Senate Bill 318. Representative Highland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that we pass Senate Bill number 318 favorably.
Second by Representative Epley. Discussion, committee. Representative Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I want to say that I stood in strong support of the initial sensible House bill that we all passed out, but, the spend it ended up, doing what they do, and now we've got an issue where, they're going to be building fences and making Johnson County pay for it, and so I have difficulty supporting this. Any way that we can just, walk it back, do the sensible thing that the House folks do. I don't have an actual amendment drafted, but if we could possibly gut this bad boy and put our version into it, I would be amenable to it if the chair supports, of course.
Anyone is welcome to bring an amendment.
I am so totally going to do that. If we can do that conceptually, that is what I would like to do.
Okay, do you want to explain to the reviser what you want to strip out? Are you wanting to just completely gut the entire thing and put in?
What we passed out of House Committee.
Okay.
Because we're better and we made sensible decisions. And so I would like to bring this back to the House position, please.
I think that was 2464 was our House bill. Is that correct, Representative Wassinger? Do you remember what our House bill? Go ahead. Revisers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, you are correct. House Bill 2464. So my understanding of the motion would be to gut the underlying contents currently in Senate Bill 318 and replace with the contents of House Bill 2464 as passed the House Tax Committee.
Okay. Is everybody clear? Second on the amendment from Representative Helgerson. Representative Clayton, you have the floor if you want to discuss further.
I move my amendment. We made smart decisions in this committee.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Representative Corbett?
Not so much on the amendment.
Yes. Speak into your mic, just so everybody can hear you.
Not so much on the amendment, but what was the original bill about? Did the bill we started with, did that include property tax on destruction? No.
It did not. The House Bill 2464 was just for the wildfire relief as happened on December 15th. Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have a question about the process. I agree with Representative Clayton. I think our original bill was a good bill. Obviously, the Senate thought it needed fixing somehow. So if we go back and pass our original bill, what's the likelihood that they're just going to say, oh, okay?
I'm not going to speculate on what's going to happen over in the Senate.
Well, is anybody, could I open it up to Representative Helgerson? You've been up here a long time. What do you, I'm just trying to learn. I like what Representative Clayton is trying to do here, but on the other hand, are we just spinning our wheels?
I think that's an accurate statement. Whether or not, I mean, the bill that started over in the Senate Tax Committee, if I remember right, most of these amendments were put on the floor. So we can't really necessarily say what would happen to this bill. I do know that if we did this, since it's changed with an amendment from the House, it would have to go to conference committee to work out any differences. So if you're questioning the process, you know, it does change the process a little bit as far as when you make changes to a bill in one chamber, it has to go back to the other chamber. They would either concur with our changes or it would go to a conference committee then. Representative Corbett.
Chairman, since you were a county commissioner, in referring to this, if the original 318, if the people who had lost buildings and whatever through this disaster, and how would they be treated for a property tax without passing this? You know what I'm saying? So if you were in this fire and you lost all your buildings, this kind of rebates their property tax. But if you were a county commissioner and this doesn't pass, what happens to these people otherwise for any kind of relief if they've lost everything in the 7th month of the year? You know what I'm saying?
You're correct. And currently there's no law in the books that allows for that abatement of that property destroyed in a disaster. We do have some bills. We have one in the bill index. It's in the committee that we could work. The Senate did have a bill. We had some hearings on it last year, if you remember. We just didn't get it moved through the committee, so there's still a chance. I think what the Senate did was they took the contents of that bill and kind of bundled it together into this package. But currently, in current law, there's nothing that would allow the county the authority to abate those taxes.
Well, you know, I have no idea where this is going, but who cares? Who really cares? But, you know, it's just like we talked about, and you saw the videos of everybody's lost everything out there. And here we are picking the bones over a piece of barbed wire. Seems kind of crazy, really.
Any further discussion? Representative Helgerson?
From my vast experience, I guess, you go into the negotiation already having sympathy on their position, you're going to give. You go into a position of negotiation with the Senate, and the Senate knows that they're delaying this, and you tell them basically to, you know, where. You have a chance of getting this through and tell them, you know, oh, it is a matter of negotiation and psych. You know, it is not necessarily policy. It's about egos. And the Senate usually gets it over on the House because we're kind of wishy-washy and a little friendly. You know, you go into the negotiation and you tell the Senate, these people have been waiting for their sales tax exemption and getting their fences up, and you keep delaying them, and I'll tell you right now, you're not going to get it until the next year or the year after if you're going to wait. Put the pressure on the Senate.
Representative Clayton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I can speak very highly of our committee leadership here when I think that there are no 3 men that I want more at that negotiating table for us, for something that provides us with tax relief that these people deserve. This was very emotionally moving testimony, but also done in common sense Kansas ways, AKA the House way. I support you. I am so proud to have you on our team, and am ready to move the amendment when the time comes.
Representative Schmidt.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of clarification. If I recall right, the bill we passed gives the sales tax in perpetuity for wildfires or for disaster if the disaster is declared. Is that correct?
That's correct. That was one of the biggest differences in House Bill 2464. Previously, when this concept has been passed, it was just for one event and it had an expiration date. 2464 allowed for basically the permanent exemption to be in place as long as there was a declared disaster either at the federal, state, or local level. And so it allowed for a little bit more responsiveness because, as we saw with the December 15th fire, that happened outside of legislative session. So even if the governor declared a disaster, they had to wait until the legislature convened to introduce a bill and approve this. Yes.
One more just point to make. I think in regards to the property tax issue, I think one of the things that we were all kind of surprised is that fences were not included in insurance, but buildings are. And I think that was a difference that we were talking about at that time. So I'd remind us to keep that in mind, which surprised me that fences were not part of it.
Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not that they aren't included in insurance. After talking to the insurance department, it is tremendously expensive to be able to insure fences, and that's one of the reasons the whole insurance part is just out of control, and people would not be buying it. It would be so expensive. So it's not included in your household insurance because it's part of the property, I believe, and it's hard to figure out. I just think the original bill was the most pure. It took care of what we needed to do. It changed statute so it continued for any disaster. And I'm a little dismayed by what the Senate has done. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Committee, is there any further discussion on the Clayton amendment? Yes, Representative Abraham.
Sorry for being late, Mr. Chairman. I was listening online, but the Senate bill, as it is right now, apologize for not getting this. It exempts the sales tax on fencing materials going forward, correct?
Yes, those not necessarily destroyed by a disaster, it just exempts a new category of sales products.
So, and from, I think several people have said area states also have that exemption already. So it kind of puts us on a equal playing field, especially along the border, which is a lot of pasture land. And then also just the concept of not taxing equipment, materials used in production. Businesses in Kansas also have that sales tax exemption, which I think fencing is very similar to a tool or machine used in production. So I think it's important to keep that in the bill, and makes a lot of sense for the Kansas ranchers. So I ask that we oppose the amendment.
Further discussion? Apologize, I need to check online. We've got a few members online. If there are no questions, Representative Clayton, you may close.
I close. Thank you for your consideration, committee.
Committee, you've heard the motion by Representative Clayton. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no? No. The ayes appear to have it. Division's been called. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. And those opposed, please raise your hand. 14 to 4, 15 to 4, okay. The motion passes. Committee, is there any further discussion? Committee, the reviser was informing me, usually when we do a gut and go, it's considered House substitute for Senate Bill 318 now, since we have substantially changed it.
Oh, I
Representative Clegg.
fully support that because, again, it is the House position. Let's make them bend to our will. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion on what used to be House Bill 2464? Seeing none, Representative Highland, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I close on House Substitute for Senate Bill 318.
Committee, you've heard the motion by Representative Highland. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Committee, thank you for your work today. We are adjourned.